Hi, this is Kelsey Huff, and you're listening to The Crunchy Cook. You can find me online at crunchycook.com, or you can follow me on Facebook. I'm here today with my special guest, Deborah Taylor-Hough, author of Frozen Assets, Cook for a Day, Eat for a Month, and we're going to chat about cooking ahead for the freezer. So, tell me, Debbie, how did you get started?
How did I get started cooking for the freezer? Well, the very first time I was ever made aware of the idea of cooking ahead was when my first child was born. She was born 2 months prematurely, and it was kind of a shock to us. We weren't prepared by any means to have a baby 2 months early, but somebody that we knew came over to our house and brought us 2 weeks worth of frozen meals. And it was so easy to just have dinner in the freezer and, heat up lunches that were there. And, because she brought soups and dinners and all kinds of stuff. And it was really awesome. And then later on, a couple years later, when I was on bed rest with another baby, another friend brought me a couple weeks worth of meals. And, once again, I saw how easy it made life. But it wasn't really something I had thought about doing with my everyday cooking right at first. But I really did see just, in the midst of an emergency or a difficult life experience, how good it was.
What would you recommend someone do who only has a small fridge top freezer? How would they get their food to fit in there?
Well, actually, for about 3 years, I was cooking like a full month's worth of meals and putting them just in my fridge top freezer. I started out with like doubling and tripling recipes instead of like trying to do a full 30 meals at one time. So like if I made lasagna, I would make 3 of them and we'd eat 1 that night and then put 2 in the freezer. And just a week of tripling recipes, of eating 1 tonight, freezing 2. You'll have 2 weeks worth of frozen meals in your freezer with virtually no extra work, and it doesn't take up all that much room. I also recommend that people freeze things in freezer bags. If they lay them flat, it takes up a lot less room than trying to store in boxes or round freezer containers. It's a good idea, too, if you just have a small fridge top freezer, if you know you're going to be doing a big cooking. Before you do that, you want to clear out all the extra stuff. Like, this is a good time to eat all the extra ice cream and take all the frozen bread out. Another way, too, to save space is to prepare sauces that you would serve over rice or noodles. Then you can just cook up the rice or noodles from scratch each night, and then the sauce is usually the more time-consuming thing. So it's nice to have that frozen ahead.
How do you keep track of which meals are in the freezer and which have been used?
Well, I usually don't do this very, very well. I usually tend to not know what's in my freezer.
Oh.
But if I were doing this the way I try to teach people to do it, if I would practice what I preach, it's a good idea to post a list of all the meals that are in your freezer and, just like post it on the outside of the freezer door or on the side of the freezer or something, and then just mark off things as you use them up. Mm-hmm. So if you have 5 lasagnas, mark off that you used up 1, and then you still have 4 left. That's usually the best way to do it, but
that makes sense.
Of course I don't. And I never know what's in there.
So I don't have a lot of experience like freezer cooking. How do I know what foods will freeze well and which ones won't?
What I usually recommend that people do is take a field trip to the grocery store and just walk down the frozen food aisle and take a look at everything that's there, because there's no reason why a home cook couldn't freeze pretty much everything that you're going to see in the store. So, walk by and see what is there. There's lasagna and there's chicken parm and, there's vegetarian dishes, there are breakfast meals. I mean, a lot of people think of cooking ahead for the freezer as just being something that you do with your dinner meals, but there's no reason why you couldn't freeze ahead breakfasts or lunches or snacks. Mm-hmm. So, taking a field trip is a good thing to do.
That's good. That makes sense. What kind of freezer containers do you usually use?
Plastic food storage boxes are a really good idea, but one thing you have to be sure of is that they're food safe and that you can reheat in them. There are some things that, like a margarine tub is food safe, obviously, because it's got margarine in it, but you can't reheat in it because it will actually seep harmful chemicals into your food, and a lot of people don't know that. So you want to make sure that it says on the container that it's safe for microwave use. I usually check at garage sales and thrift stores for, like glass bakeware, because that actually freezes quite well and can go straight from the freezer into the oven. You can also use as many like freezer bags as you possibly can, because that takes up the least amount of room. But if you want to use little boxes, I recommend square boxes rather than round ones, because they fit more efficiently in the freezer.
That makes sense. So if I were to do the complete 30-day meal planning all at once, it seems like that would be a lot of food. Is that really expensive?
It can be. It depends on what you buy. But usually what you find is that you're able to purchase things in bulk, and you can take advantage of sales. What I try to do is that, like, if there's a sale on ground beef, I would maybe make a few more ground beef recipes than maybe some other things, just to take advantage of those sales prices. But, you can buy a big chub of like a 10-pound thing of ground beef, and that's going to be a lot cheaper than buying it just by, one meal's worth of ground beef. So it can be expensive, but it's not really as expensive as people would think it is.
What about for cooks in small places? My kitchen is really tiny. Would it be able to handle that volume of cooking?
Oh my gosh, I have had small kitchens my whole life, so so if I can do it, anybody can do it. But you can make extra counter space for yourself. You can use the kitchen table. I've actually used my washer and dryer before for putting things on when I'm preparing stuff. You can turn off your stove and use the stovetop for preparing things. I don't really have a whole lot of counter space right at the moment, but I could still do a full month worth of cooking. So it's not really something that you have to rule out just because your kitchen's small. If you have a little like a folding table, you could set that up and use it as well.
That makes sense. So what about specialty diets? I'm gluten-free, and a lot of my readers either have gluten issues or other allergies or food problems. What about specialty diets and freezer cooking? Is that possible?
Oh, definitely. Once again, as you're taking your field trip to the store and you're seeing all the lovely things that can be frozen, keep in mind that those same things can usually be frozen if gluten-free or vegetarian. One thing I recommend that people do, though, is that if you make one of your recipes that you're normally eating, and you take a single serving out and then freeze that just by itself, let it sit for a little bit in the freezer, maybe a week or so, and then take it out, thaw it out, reheat it, and see if you like it or not. Because sometimes, like rice noodles, they're kind of sensitive and they don't always freeze real well. So I would probably recommend, if somebody were using a lot of rice noodles, that maybe you would do, freeze the sauces that you're going to serve over them and then cook the noodles up fresh, because I don't think they're really going to freeze as well as like regular wheat noodles would. And anything vegetarian is going to freeze as well as anything else. A lot of vegetarian meals, tofu freezes well.
That's interesting.
Cooked beans freeze well. So all of those alternative protein things. TVP freezes great. So, you don't have to think that this is just for meat and potatoes eaters. It's for anybody.
That's good. So, Debbie, how can someone find you online to find out more information about your cooking for the freezer?
Hey, well, you can go to Amazon.com and look for Frozen Assets, How to Cook for a Day and Eat for a Month, and you'll find my books. Or you can go to my website directly, and that's at frozenassets.info. That's frozenassets.info. And I'm also on Facebook.
So check out Debbie's websites and books. You've been listening to The Crunchy Cook, and this is Kelsey. You can find my blog at crunchycook.com, or you can follow me on Facebook.